Welcome to Property Pillars. This is a show where we talk to property professionals about buy-to-let investments, mortgages, land developments and other topics. Whether you're a first-time buyer or a seasoned investor, this is a show for you. Have you ever wondered about ways to control property without cash? Well, today's show we have Jim Haliburton of HMO Daddy with us. He's going to tell us the 5 ways you can control property, make money from property without cash. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Jim Haliburton to Property Pillars. So, about HMOs, first of all, let's understand what exactly is a HMO.
Right. Thanks for inviting us anyway. HMOs stands for House and Multiple Occupation, but I think most people would probably understand it as a shared house. Some people call it bedsits, some people call it student housing, but it's developed far beyond student housing now. It's where you take a property and generally let it by the room, and people share kitchen and bathroom, though some the better ones nowadays are en suites, so you have ensuite rooms and some kind of communal sharing.
Okay, what's the difference between a HMO and a single let, for example?
Right, well, single let, generally the person will take it on a 6-month contract. They pay all the utilities and bills, often have to furnish it, while if you rent a room in a house, it's usually fully furnished, ready to move in. The utilities are paid for. You don't often get tied down to a 6-month contract. It's cheaper to move into and easier to move into. It's a bit like, I always look upon it as a halfway between a flat and a hotel room. Hotel rooms are much more expensive, and you've got restrictions on your ability to cook, while it's HMO is somewhere where you can live with your own room and you share the kitchen and sometimes bathrooms.
So if I've got a typical 3-bedroom property, living room, dining room and everything else, how would I turn that into a HMO?
Right, well that's entirely down to yourself. The first thing you've got to look at is there a demand for rooms in your area, and whether you want to go to the trouble of turning your property into an HMO, because you obviously want to do it to make more money, and you can make an awesome lot more money out of renting a property for an HMO. The science tends to work on the rule of 5 with business. The first 2 tenants pay for the rent. The third one pays for the utilities. The fourth pays for the extra administration, voids, bad debts, and the 5th tenant makes your profit. So that's why you're better off having a 6-bed HMO, because that 6th person makes extra profit for you. And having 6 in a property is the equivalent of having 2 5-bed HMOs, if you look at it that way. So it makes it a lot more profitable. A bit more work involved, a bit more regulation involved, but I just wouldn't. I wouldn't worry about it. But then again, it's easy for me to say that because I'm used to it. People don't know what they don't know. But once you get used to it and taking the plunge, you find that it's a good way of maximising the income out of property.
Well, from a planning point of view, a planning question, you've got a typical 3-bedroom HMO. Do I need to get planning permission to convert it into rooms?
Well, since 2010, the government relaxed the rules on this. Before, it was a bit of a grey area whether you need planning permission to turn a property into an HMO. Since 2010, the government have said that you can have up to 6 sharing without any planning permission. And so that was gave the green light to HMOs, and it's probably the reason why so many more people are doing HMOs now, because you're allowed to do this up to 6 sharing, not a problem, unless it's an area where they've brought in restrictions. Some, and it's very small parts of the country, have said that you need planning permission for an HMO, and that's what's called Article 4. So you're back to where you were pre-2010, but that, as I say, is a very small part of the country. So just contact your local authority, ask them, is there an Article 4 in this area? Other areas also require you to have licensing, and that can apply to HMOs and even to single lets. It depends on the circumstances.
So what's your opinion about housing benefit tenants and HMOs?
Right. I've actually been labelled as the king of unemployed tenants. Everyone thinks I just let the unemployed, when in fact the most I've ever done is about 60 to 70%. long-term average was less than 10%. But it's mainly because when people come and visit me, I find my unemployed tenants are much more sociable, friendly. They like to have the social contact, so I can take people around and show them properties where you've got unemployed tenants.
People think buying property conventionally, you need to have cash. You need to have some sort of finance to start. So you're saying to me that there's potentially 5 ways you can own or control property without cash. I'm curious. Tell me.
Sure. Most people who get into property buy it to start with and use up the cash, and they use these techniques afterwards. But there's nothing to stop you using the techniques to start with if you haven't got money. I'm not pretending that you don't need cash. It does help a lot, but you can do it even with cash. I've done it myself, where you can get hold of property. The easiest and simplest, which is most well known, is what's called rent to rent. What you do is rent a property from quite often a tired landlord who's fed up with dealing with tenants, and you can take the property on. You may say, well, you need cash for the deposit and the rent. Not necessarily. If the property is not in very good condition and the landlord can't let it, you can negotiate a rent-free period. Then what you do is multi-let the property. You let it by the room, which gives a far higher income. We talked about that on a previous programme, which shows you how you can make almost 5 times as much income out of letting the property by the room. So by multi-letting the property, you start bringing an income which enables you to pay the landlord, and you make profit. So it's what's called a rent to rent. But the great advantage in property is not the income. If you really want to make a lot of money in property, you want the capital appreciation, which takes me on to my second strategy, which is rent to buy. You rent the property, but you agree at the beginning normally that you have the right to buy that property. I would suggest you do it with a fixed price, because most people don't realise that property will go up in value. So once you've got the property up and let, you're getting a good income on it. Hopefully the prices of the properties have increased as well, but you don't have to rely on the price of the property using this strategy, because you go to lenders who will value the property on its income, not on its bricks and mortar value. So that enables you to buy the property, and then you fix the capital appreciation you can get in the property as well. So you've got an income in 2 ways. One, you've got the income from letting it, especially by multi-letting it, and then you've got the capital appreciation from where the properties go up. So you've got the 2, rent to rent, rent to buy. And then you've got what's called delay completion, where someone wants to sell the property, but they haven't got the immediate need for money, or may only need a very small amount of money. Then you take the property on. Sometimes it may have a very high mortgage on it, in which case you just agree to pay the mortgage, again using the strategies I was talking about, where you multi-let the property, let it by the room. You can afford to pay the mortgage, pay all the upkeep of the property, but you've agreed to buy it. That is an obligation to buy it in the future. The 4th way is where you come mainly dealing with commercial property. And the government have relaxed the rules on commercial property. You can turn commercial property into residential quite easily now. Commercial landlords issue leases. Now, if you get a long enough lease, it's almost the equivalent to owning the property. There's very little difference in value. If you have a 99-year lease on a property, that's almost the same as owning it. So if you lease the property, if you have a 10-year lease on it, that gives you time to make an income out of that property, which you can then use to perhaps buy other property, or if you get a nice long lease, then that's even better. But better still is getting a lease with the option to purchase. So as time goes on, you're getting the income from the property. Remember what I said? It can be valued on the income it produces. That will enable you to buy the property. And the final way is what's called vendor finance. Vendor means the owner. So the owner finances the sale. Where you've got a motivated seller who can't sell, it's difficult to sell the property, you go to them and say, I'll buy your property. Say they want 100,000 for it. You agree to buy it at £1,000 a month over the next 100 months, which is about 8 or 9 years. It doesn't usually become yours until you purchased it, but you've got that period of time in which to buy it. You have the right to occupy it, and again, by multi-letting it, you can afford to pay the £1,000 a month that the owner wants for the property. The owner's got the satisfaction of knowing it's sold. but has security that it's not sold until you paid every last penny for it. In the meantime, he's getting money from the property, and that might suit him from his tax point of view. You are now responsible for the property.
Thank you very much, Jim Haliburton, for coming on to Property Pillars. We appreciate having you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Join us after the break for more interviews from our expert.